I'm Brian, this is Edmunds, and we are back yet again with another long-term intro video because we just can't stop buying new electric vehicles. This thing behind me is the latest member to join our long-term fleet. It is a 2024 Fisker Ocean Extreme, and we're gonna live with it for about a year and 20,000 miles to see just how it does. A good place to start with any of our long-term vehicles is, how much did it cost? And in the case of our new Ocean Extreme, the answer is quite a bit. It came in at just under $70,000 on the sticker, and that's a lot of scratch. It's much more than we just paid for the Chevrolet Blazer EV that we also recently added to our long-term fleet, and we're going to talk about that vehicle a little bit more later in this video. It's worth mentioning that there are much cheaper versions of the Ocean that are also available, with the single motor base model coming in at under $40,000, and that vehicle is meant to go up against things like the Tesla Model Y. But we wanted to test out the Ocean with all of the available features, and this was also the one that we could get our hands on the soonest, so here we are. One of the reasons that we're so excited to add a Fisker to our fleet is that this vehicle kind of right now feels pretty incomplete. It's missing some of the features that we actually paid for, and we're gonna have it over the year to see how long it takes for those things to actually be added to our Ocean to make it feel more of a complete vehicle. So without further ado, let's get into it. It wouldn't be an Edmunds video without testing numbers, and we had another version of the Fisker in at the end of last year, so we were able to put it through the entire Edmunds testing regimen. That vehicle was a 2023 Fisker Ocean 1, one of the first 5,000 units of the Ocean, but mechanically identical to the Extreme that we have here, so the numbers between the two should be the same. Now, on our test track, it put up a 0 to 60 mile an hour time of 4.1 seconds and a 12.4 second quarter mile as well. And that's a result that we achieved using boost mode. What is boost mode, you might be asking, and that is a great question. Boost mode is a very neat party trick that the Fisker Ocean has, and it's the only way to access the vehicle's full 564 horsepower. So if you're in fun or hyper mode with both motors going, you get a maximum of 468 horsepower, but this, you get the full beans, as they like to say. Now, the catch with the boost, you only get 500 of them. You get 500 of these very hard launches, and that's it for the life of the vehicle. So since we just bought this thing, that counter is at 500, and I'm gonna be the first one to get to take it down to 499. Now to set it up, all you do is you put it in hyper mode here, and you just hit boost to on. And that's pretty much it. There's little instructions below it. All you do is you come to a complete stop, and then you fully press the accelerator pedal. So here we go. All right, 3, 2, 1. That is 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds, and that our launch counter has gone down from 500 to 499. Now the funny thing is, when we tested this vehicle, we didn't actually get a really much better time in boost mode. The time difference between boost and just regular hyper was actually only a few hundredths of a second, and that's because the only way to activate it is to go full throttle right away, and that gives you some wheel slip as it sends all that power down. So cool party trick, but it doesn't actually make the vehicle much faster. The one other funny question that we have is, these long-term vehicles, they get driven by pretty much all of the Edmunds staff. So since we only have 500 launches, we're wondering who's gonna take more than their fair share, and my money's on Kurt. Kurt, what do they feed you? As we know, for EVs, it's not just important how fast they go, but also how far they can go. So we also put the Ocean on the soon-to-be world-famous Edmunds EV range test to see just how far that might be. Now the Ocean, with the hyper range battery like it has here, 113 kilowatt hours, has an EPA estimated 360 miles of range, and in our test, it almost hit that, going 358 miles. Now that's an impressive result for this vehicle because it's tested on what's called the 5-cycle test, and generally in our testing, those vehicles have really struggled to meet their EPA estimates, but in the case of the Ocean, it seems to be pretty spot on, and it's made even more impressive by the fact that our test vehicle had 22-inch wheels while the EPA certified on 20-inch wheels. And larger wheels are generally much less efficient, but here, going to a bigger wheel doesn't really hurt you all that much. The other thing that it has that helps is a solar roof. So on the top of the roof there's actually solar panels, and those are always kind of trickle charging the vehicle and adding range back in. Fisker estimates that in somewhat ideal conditions, that roof can actually add about 1,500 miles of range per year. So if you do a little bit of math, that's about 3 miles a day. And that probably helped us on the day of the test because it was pretty sunny that day as well. Now that we've gotten testing numbers out of the way, that leads us to another important number, and that would be the Edmunds rating. But before we get there, it's important to add some context to the Fisker, because we at Edmunds here, we buy a lot of EVs from startup companies. Our fleet right now has a Rivian, a Lucid. We've owned every Tesla except for the Roadster and that giant metallic monstrosity currently terrorizing your neighborhood. So we have a lot of experience with these new vehicles from these new companies that don't quite feel complete when you get them. A lot of them feel like they're in beta. Now, buying a vehicle from a non-startup doesn't always mean great things. We also recently bought a Chevrolet Blazer EV, and that is going not so well. But here in the Ocean, even by the standards of a startup, it still feels pretty incomplete. And that's in part because a lot of the features that we're paying for with that very high sticker price, we don't even have yet on this vehicle. A lot of them are promised by Fisker to arrive sometime in 2024, some in early 2024, but others, we're not quite sure when they're actually going to appear. So we're paying for things like adaptive cruise control, which it doesn't have. We're paying for things like voice commands, which it also doesn't have. And that's on top of some of the other usability and drivability issues that we've noticed with this vehicle. Issues that started pretty much right away with our Ocean. The first one happened while driving back to Los Angeles after we picked the vehicle up near San Diego, when the automatic forward emergency braking and lane keeping assist both shut off due to a front camera fault. Over the course of our first week with the Ocean, we got more errors, mostly related to the different safety systems, and they affected things like the blind spot monitors and the backup camera as well. Now, most of these problems would be resolved when the vehicle was restarted, but it's still disconcerting not to know which of the safety systems will be working each time you get behind the wheel. We've also had some problems with the screen and Bluetooth connectivity in the same time frame, and when you add it all up, it just feels like it's a lot. All of those factors sort of combine to give the Ocean an Edmunds rating of just 7.4, and that puts it tied for dead last in its category. We spent some time talking about the things that the Ocean doesn't have yet, but it's time now to get into what the Ocean does have, and that starts right here. This 17.1-inch touchscreen is the beating heart of the automobile. Most of the things that you're going to be looking for in terms of the controls and how to interact with the Ocean all takes place right here. Although one thing that's different about the Ocean compared to other vehicles that have large screens like this is that it retains physical controls for some things like the climate control, for the volume, and there are also some helpful wheel controls as well. So we like having tactile buttons. These are kind of easier to use a lot of times than having to go into the screen to do all the climate controls. That doesn't mean that everything is good though. This screen, there's a touch of input lag with the navigation. So this is powered by TomTom. As you can see, it's not like super responsive. Takes a little bit of time to figure things out. And also I noticed that the destinations aren't always up to date. So sort of new restaurants and things like that aren't quite in here yet. TomTom is not as up to date as something like Google Maps will be. Speaking of Google Maps, no smartphone mirroring. So there's not going to be Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Fisker says that they believe in what they have here in the native sort of infotainment setup. Hopefully it's something that improves over time, and it's something that we've definitely seen improve in other vehicles as we've owned them. They become a bit snappier, things get faster, so hopefully that's the case here. One thing though, going back to the climate controls that I really don't like about the Ocean is that for the air vents, you have to actually aim them through the screen. So they're sort of integrated into the dash here, and if you want to change where the air is pointed, you kind of have to do it through the screen here. And it's really hard to kind of get a feel for where the air is going. But to me, a vent with a little thing that you can point, that'll always kind of be better for something like this. This interior and the whole of the Ocean actually has a big focus on sustainability. So Fisker says that 95% of this vehicle is recyclable, and on the interior alone, there's over 100 pounds of recyclable materials. So these seats, a lot of materials here on the dashboard, those are all synthetic. They do use real Alcantara because they say that that's actually pretty environmentally friendly. But again, just a heavy emphasis on recyclable materials. It does make it feel a bit synthetic, but it's not sterile at all. And I actually like this material here on the dashboard quite a bit. So this is a bit bigger than most of the compact electric SUVs that are out there. So you get really good headroom and legroom, especially in the second row. So you can fit 4 adults in this vehicle very comfortably. And one other thing that we've enjoyed about the Ocean is the build quality. So unlike many of the other EV startups who decided to figure out how to build a vehicle themselves, Fisker has outsourced the manufacturing of the Ocean to a company in Austria at the same factory where they actually build things like the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. So from a build quality standpoint, this actually feels a lot better put together than our Lucid, for an example, and even I would say on par with our Rivian, a vehicle that we've liked the build quality of. Now I know this has all maybe felt a little bit negative so far, but there are definitely things about the Ocean that I do really like. Get into my car. One of them is this instrument panel. It shows you just enough information, not too much, not too little. It tells you everything you need to know in a very quick and easy to read format without being distracting. Like that a lot. I also like that Fisker has sort of included these quirky little things here on the interior, one of them being these taco trays. So we live in California, and out here we do eat a lot of tacos. I don't have a taco on me, but I do have these Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So there's one here for the driver and one here for the passenger as well. So you can eat in the car without causing as much of a mess. This screen, also on the extreme trim, it will do this. It can actually rotate while the vehicle is in park, and that will allow you to watch YouTube videos, Disney Plus, Hulu, any other streaming stuff. Here on the extreme, we're gonna get 3 years free of data, so that's gonna cover our ownership of the vehicle, though Fisker says after that, you're probably gonna have to pay for a data package of some kind. But the pièce de résistance for this vehicle is California mode. And when you activate that, all the windows open, and that would include this really big sky roof here, those quarter panel windows over by the rear, and also the rear glass, kind of like a 4Runner. So how does the Fisker Ocean drive? We've already established that it's pretty quick in a straight line, but quick doesn't always mean fun, and in the case of the Ocean, that's definitely true. That's not to say that this is a bad handling vehicle. It's just, you know, not a ton of fun from behind the wheel. There's a pretty good amount of body roll. I will say that on the street, it's quite comfortable. The suspension is really well tuned. It never feels too sloppy, but it never also feels too firm, kind of like Goldilocks in that way. It's a vehicle that you can easily get behind the wheel of and drive for a long way without being too uncomfortable. I do wish that the seats were a little bit more supportive though. I wish that there was some sort of like extendable thigh support. That would help a little bit, but overall, I would say it drives pretty nicely, and if you want to have some fun, that boost mode is a pretty good trick as well. My least favorite part about the Ocean driving experience though would have to be the brake pedal. There's this weird kind of dead spot at the top of it where you feel like you initially touch the brakes and then not a lot really happens. Something that I'm guessing that they're going to get feedback on and dial back in along the way, but for now, it does make it a bit difficult to stop the Ocean smoothly because, you know, it feels like you're hitting the brake, nothing's happening, so you hit a little harder and then all of a sudden it grabs on you. The regenerative braking, there are 3 settings, low, medium, and high, and they all feel pretty well calibrated, but for some reason, there is no one pedal driving. So that means that if you're in high regen, as you're coming up to, let's say, a stop sign or a stop light, the vehicle will slow itself, and then when it gets down to about 5 miles an hour, it just sort of lets go. So you have to kind of anticipate that and be ready to be on the brakes. It sort of feels like the car is gonna slow you down all the way, and then you get to the last part, and it's just like, you take care of it now. So that's a bit annoying. The other thing too is there's no auto hill hold. So if the Ocean is on any kind of incline or decline, and you know, put it in drive or you put it in reverse and you take your foot off the brake, it's just gonna start rolling. And the other feature that you're really missing from the driving experience is the adaptive cruise control. So if you're on some kind of like long trip, it makes it more tiring. So there's an update coming early 2024 that should add hill hold, that should add one pedal driving, and at some point adaptive cruise control will arrive as well. So these are issues that can be fixed and should be fixed by Fisker in the somewhat near future. Now, Fisker likes to call this a software-defined vehicle, which means that through over-the-air updates, they can basically change how everything in this vehicle works. And that's another thing that we're going to keep an eye on for this year to see if those things improve and make the Ocean better to live with. Now, if I had to think of the Ocean sort of in human terms, I kind of think about it like College Brian. And if I were to give a human rating to College Brian, it would be pretty low because that guy was a little bit annoying. He had some good ideas, but really no idea how to execute them. And I probably wouldn't want to hang out with him for too long. But I would like to think that over time, I've maybe become a bit more mature, a bit more focused, and hopefully my human rating has gone up since then. And I think that will be the case with the Ocean. As sort of these teething pains get sorted out, we're hoping that the solid build quality, the things that we like about it, will just be built upon, and hopefully that rating can drag it up out of the dredges as well. So stick with us as we stick with the Ocean for a year, and hopefully 12 months from now, we're all rated a little bit higher. Thanks for watching. And now for the best, most satisfying part of buying any new electronic, I'm gonna peel the plastic off. Oh, all right. Nobody's allowed to touch this because it will never be clean again.